The phone rang at 7:42 on a Tuesday night in October. I was standing at the kitchen sink, hands deep in warm soapy water, washing the same blue-rimmed plate my husband Tom used every morning for 43 years. I dried my hands on the dish towel that still smelled faintly of his old spice, and answered, "Mom." David's voice was cold, sharp, like a knife left outside in January. "Mom, we need to talk about the lake house." I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. "Oh, honey, did you and Amber want to come up this weekend? I can make that chicken you stop, just stop." A long pause. "I'm tired, Mom. I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of driving 2 hours to check on you. I'm tired of seeing you." My knees went weak. I gripped the counter. "David, what are you saying?" "I'm saying I wish you were already gone." He said it flat. No anger, no tears, just fact. "I wish you were dead, Mom. Then the house would be mine, the accounts would be mine, and I wouldn't have to keep doing this charity." The room started spinning. 43 years of bedtime stories, of bandaging scraped knees, of selling my mother's wedding ring so he could go to college. And this is what I raised. "David, you don't mean that." My voice cracked like thin ice. "I've never meant anything more. Amber and I have a buyer lined up. They'll pay cash the day after you're gone. So just speed it up, okay?" Then he hung up. I stood there holding that old cordless phone until the battery died. No screaming, no crying, just a quiet, hollow sound in my chest, like someone had reached in and turned off a light that had been burning since 1979. If you felt this one deep in your chest, give it a like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss a story. Then drop a quick comment and let me know. Where are you listening from? I love knowing you're out there. My name is Ruth Elena Matthews. Most folks just call me Ruthie. I'm 72 years old, widowed 4 years, and until that Tuesday night, I still believed my only child loved me. Tom and I bought the lake house on Lake Oswego in 1985, with every penny of his life insurance payout when his first wife passed. We painted the shutters robins, egg blue, planted climbing roses along the fence, and promised each other this would be the place our grandchildren would run barefoot every summer. David was 22 when we signed the papers. Instead of giving him the money for a deposit on some downtown condo like his friends, we put the house in my name alone and told him, "One day this will be yours, son, when we're gone. Until then, it's home for all of us." He hugged me so tight that day I thought my ribs would crack. "Thank you, Mom. I don't deserve you." Turns out he was right. Over the years, I signed the lake house over to him, little by little, first to help with taxes, then so you and Amber can build equity. By 2023, the deed read David D. Matthews and Amber L. Matthews. My name was gone. I didn't mind. He was my boy. What was mine was his. I kept living in our little ranch house in Milwaukee, 15 minutes away. He promised he'd visit every Sunday. The first year, he came 12 times. The second year, 4, last year, once, brought Amber in designer sunglasses, barely said hello, asked if I'd thought any more about moving into assisted living so the lake house could be rented out for income. I laughed it off. Mothers do that. But after that Tuesday phone call, something inside me died before my body ever got the chance. I didn't sleep. I sat in Tom's old recliner until the sun came up, watching the dust dance in the first light, remembering the little boy who used to fall asleep on my chest while I rocked him and sang "You Are My Sunshine." At 6:03 in the morning, I made coffee. At 6:17 in the morning, I opened the safe Tom installed behind the pantry shelf in 1998. Inside were the original deed, the life insurance papers, my will, and the one thing David didn't know still existed. A quit-claim deed I never recorded, signed by Tom the week before he died, giving me sole power to sell the lake house until the day I passed. Tom always knew. He saw something in our son I refused to see. I made one phone call that morning, not to David, to Jennifer Morrison, the real estate agent who sold half the houses on the lake. "Jennifer, it's Ruthie Matthews. I need to list the lake house on Oswego. Quiet listing. Cash offers only. Can you be here by 9? She was at my door at 8:47 in the morning with a folder and a stunned look. Ruthie, the deed is in David's name. No, honey, I said, handing her the unrecorded quit claim. Legally, it never was. By noon, the sign was in the yard. By 6 that evening, we had 11 cash offers. I accepted $585,000 from, closing in 9 days. Then I did the hardest thing I've ever done in 72 years on this earth. I packed one suitcase, took Tom's wedding ring from my jewelry box, left my phone on the kitchen table, and walked out the front door without looking back. David thinks I'm dead. Amber thinks I'm in a home. The world thinks Ruth Eleanor Matthews simply vanished. But I'm still here, alive, free. And for the first time since 1979, nobody owns me. I left the house key under the blue flower pot by the porch, the same place David used to hide it when he was 12 and forgot his latchkey. I took nothing but one small suitcase, my purse, Tom's wedding ring on a chain around my neck, and the manila envelope with every legal document I would ever need again. I walked the 6 blocks to the Milwaukee Library, where sweet Marlene, the head librarian for 30 years, was waiting in her old Buick. She didn't ask questions. She simply opened the passenger door, took my hand and said, "Ruthie, you're safe now." Marlene drove me to the Amtrak station in Portland. I bought a one-way ticket to Whitefish, Montana, under the name Eleanor Rose Carter, my mother's maiden name. Cash. No ID required for seniors on that route back then. As the train pulled out at 9:15 in the evening, I watched the lights of the city disappear, and I finally cried. Not for the house, not even for the money. I cried for the little boy who once picked dandelions for me and called them wishing flowers. That boy was gone long before I was. While I was crossing the Columbia River, David was getting the first phone call from Jennifer. She told me later he screamed so loud the neighbors heard. "What do you mean the house is in escrow? Mom can't sell it, it's in my name." Jennifer calmly read him the unrecorded claim deed and the statute that said until it's recorded, it doesn't exist. Then she told him closing was in 9 days and the buyer was already wiring earnest money. David and Amber raced to my little ranch house in Milwaukee, found it dark, found my cell phone on the table with one text typed but never sent. "You got your wish. Mom is gone." They called the police, filed a missing person report, told the detective I was confused, early dementia, not safe on my own. The detective, a kind man named Sergeant Alvarez, came to see Marlene at the library 2 days later. She looked him straight in the eye and said, "Ruth Matthews is the sharpest woman I know. She left of her own free will. She's exercising her legal right to disappear. There is no case here." Meanwhile, I was sitting on a train watching the Rockies roll by, drinking coffee from a paper cup, feeling lighter with every mile. I got off in Whitefish, Montana, on a crisp October morning when the large trees were pure gold. A retired pastor and his wife, friends of Marlene's cousin, met me at the station. They drove me 20 miles outside town to a tiny log cabin on 10 acres that had belonged to the wife's mother. Rent, $1 a year, and help with the garden. I hung new curtains the first week, planted tulip bulbs the second. On the third Sunday, I walked into the little community church and introduced myself as Ellie Carter, visiting from Oregon. Nobody asked questions. Montana people understand that sometimes a woman needs to be born again at 72. Back in Oregon, the closing happened on schedule. $585,000 wired to an account David never knew existed. From that money, I paid cash for the cabin and the 10 acres, $148,000. I put $300,000 into a trust for the Children's Cancer Wing at Dornbecher Hospital in Tom's name. I created the Tom and Ruth Matthews Second Chance Scholarship for single mothers over 50 going back to school, $100,000 irrevocable. The remaining $7,000 I kept for living. Then I wrote one letter on real stationery and mailed it to David with no return address. David, by the time you read this, the lake house will belong to a young family with 3 little ones who will run barefoot on the dock and pick huckleberries just like you once did. Your father and I always said that house was for family. It still is, just not the family you became. I am safe. I am happy. I am free. Do not look for me. You already told me what you wished for. Wish granted. Love always because a mother can't stop. Mom. He never got an answer when he tried to reply. The post office box I rented in Kalispell forwarded everything to Marlene, and she burned it all unopened. Winter came early to Montana that year. Snow started the first week of November and didn't stop until April. I learned how to split kindling, how to keep a wood stove happy, how to bake bread that rises even when it's 20 below outside. On Sundays, I played the old upright piano in the church basement. Hymns my mother taught me in 1959. People called me Miss Ellie and brought me jars of huckleberry jam and venison stew. Nobody ever asked where I came from. They just said, "You look like a woman who's finally home." And for the first time in 50 years, I was. Back in Oregon, David's life was falling apart faster than the snow melted in spring. The buyer of the lake house was a pediatric oncologist and his wife, both in their 30s, with 3 little red-headed kids and a golden retriever. They moved in the day after closing, put swings on the big cedar tree, painted the shutters back to robins, egg blue, hung a wooden sign by the mailbox that read the Thompson Family ESD, 2024. Every time David drove past, and he did, many times, he had to see strangers living the life he thought was already his. Amber left him in December, took the BMW, the dog, and half the furniture. Left a note that said, "You promised me that house, David. You promised me security. You have nothing now." He moved into a 1-bedroom apartment above a vape shop in Tigard, started drinking at 3 p.m. most days, lost his job in February when the startup finally folded. In March, he found the scholarship announcement online. Dornbutcher Children's Hospital receives $300,000 anonymous gift in memory of Thomas Matthews from a grateful Oregon widow. He knew. He knew it was his inheritance paying for other people's sick children while he couldn't make rent. He called Marlene at the library, screaming, threatening lawsuits. She calmly told him, "Your mother is exercising her legal rights. Every document was airtight. You have no case, David. Let it go." He hung up and punched a hole in the apartment wall. In April, he drove to the cemetery on what would have been Tom's 78th birthday, stood in front of the headstone that reads Thomas R. Matthews' beloved husband and father from 1947 until 2020, screamed at a piece of granite, "Dad, why did you do this to me? Why did you let her do this?" A groundskeeper found him an hour later, sitting in the mud, sobbing like the little boy who once lost his balloon at the county fair. That same week, the first scholarship recipient was announced. A 58-year-old widow from Gresham named Linda, who was going back to nursing school after her husband died of a heart attack. Her thank you letter was published in the local paper. "I don't know who you are, but you gave me hope when I thought hope was gone. God bless you." David read it in the library and threw up in the bathroom. By June, he was desperate. Hired a private investigator with his last credit card. The investigator traced the postmark to Kalispell, then hit a dead end, came back with a $4,200 bill and a shrug. "Your mother doesn't want to be found, Mr. Matthews, and she's made sure she never will be." That was the first night David cried himself to sleep since he was 9 years old. Meanwhile, I turned 73 on a quiet May morning. The church ladies brought a cake with real buttercream roses. I planted lilacs along the south fence. I started painting again, watercolors of the mountains that look like God, spilled a box of crayons across the horizon. I adopted a scruffy little mutt from the shelter and named her Daisy, after the dog I had when David was born. Every night I sit on my porch with a cup of chamomile and watch the stars come out. Big Montana stars that make you feel small in the best possible way. I talk to Tom out loud. I tell him the lilacs are blooming. I tell him Daisy learned to fetch. I tell him I finally understand what he tried to protect me from all those years ago. And I sleep 8 hours straight, no pills, no nightmares, for the first time since 1997. The first year slipped by like a quiet dream. I kept the radio off. The newspapers came once a week. And the only news I wanted was the sound of snow sliding off the tin roof in March and the first robin in April. I became Miss Ellie to everyone in the valley, the lady with the gentle smile who played Amazing Grace. So slow it could make a grown man cry, who always had oatmeal, raisin cookies for the children after church, who could grow tomatoes sweeter than candy in a Montana summer that lasts 6 weeks if you're lucky. I thought that was the end of the story, a clean vanishing, a life reborn. I was wrong. In August of the second year, a letter came to the tiny post office in the one stoplight town 10 miles from my cabin. No return address, just my new name, Miss Ellie Carter. Written in handwriting I hadn't seen in 23 months. I knew before I opened it. Mom, I found you. I'm sitting in the parking lot of the Hungry Horse Cafe right now. I'm not here to fight. I'm not here to beg for money. I just need 5 minutes. If you never want to see me again after that, I'll leave and you'll never hear from me again. Please, David. My hands shook so hard I dropped the letter in the dirt. Mrs. Olson, the postmistress, picked it up, read the look on my face, and said softly, Ellie, the cafe closes at 2. Whatever you decide is right. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the porch with Daisy on my lap and asked Tom out loud what Jesus would do. The stars didn't answer, but the wind in the pines sounded an awful lot like, love never stops, Ruthie. It just learns where to land. At 11:47 the next morning, I put on my Sunday dress, the lavender one I wore to Sophie's heis, cool graduation 4 years earlier, pinned Tom's wedding ring under the collar where only I knew it was, and asked Pastor Jim to drive me into town. David was sitting in the exact same booth his daddy used to love at the old truck stop cafe when we'd take road trips in 1983. He looked 10 years older than 39, hair gone thin at the temples, eyes red, wearing clothes that hung loose on a body that had forgotten how to eat properly. He stood when he saw me, couldn't speak, just started crying like a little boy who fell off his bike and skinned both knees. I slid into the booth across from him, ordered 2 coffees because my voice still worked even if my heart was in my throat. For 10 full minutes, neither of us spoke. We just sat there while the waitress came and went, and the jukebox played Patsy Cline. Finally, he found words. Mom, I was wrong. I was cruel. I was greedy. I became everything Dad was afraid I would. I lost Amber. I lost my job. I lost every friend I had. I lost the house. I lost you. And I deserved every bit of it. He reached into a paper grocery bag and pulled out the wooden sign the new family had hung by the mailbox. The Thompson family established 2024. I drive by it sometimes, he whispered. Those little red-headed kids wave at me like I'm just some stranger, and I wave back, because that's what I am now. He slid an envelope across the table. Inside were 2 things, a cashier's check for $18,312, every penny he had left in the world. A single photograph him at 6 years old, missing both front teeth, holding a stringer of bluegill we caught together at the lake, grinning like he'd won the lottery. I don't want forgiveness I haven't earned, he said. I just needed you to know I finally understand what I threw away. If you can ever find it in your heart to let me try again, 1 coffee a year, 1 Christmas card, anything, I'll spend the rest of my life earning it. If not, I'll disappear and you'll never have to see me again. He stood up to leave. I reached across the table and took his hand. It was the same hand I held when he had chicken pox, when he broke his wrist skateboarding, when he put on his graduation gown. "Sit down, David." He sat. I opened my purse and took out the little leather Bible I've carried since 1968. Inside the front cover was the picture of him at 6 that he'd just given me. I'd kept my own copy all these years. Love keeps no record of wrongs. I said, "That's what the book says. I'm 74 years old. I don't have time to keep records anymore." His face crumpled. "But love also protects itself," I continued. "So here's how this is going to work. You're going to get help, real help for the drinking and the anger. You're going to show up for meetings, for work, for life. And once a month, you're going to write me a letter paper, envelope, stamp telling me one thing you're grateful for and one thing you're doing to become the man your daddy prayed you'd be. If you miss 1 month, we're done forever. If you lie once, we're done forever. But if you keep showing up, maybe one day I'll let you see where the lilacs bloom." He cried so hard, the waitress brought extra napkins. I stood up, smoothed my lavender dress, and said, "Happy birthday, son. You're 39 today. You just got the only gift I have left to give a second chance. Don't waste it." I walked out without looking back. Pastor Jim was waiting in the truck. He didn't ask how it went. He just handed me a handkerchief and drove me home through the golden larch trees. That was 14 months ago. David has written 14 letters. Every single one on time. Some are only 3 lines. Some are 6 pages. He got a job at a hardware store. He's been sober 421 days. He volunteers every Saturday at the same children's hospital wing I gave the money to. He still lives in that tiny apartment, but there's a picture of the lake house on his fridge with the words, "One day at a time," written underneath. I still haven't told him where I live. Maybe I never will. Maybe one day I'll send him a huckleberry pie and a note that says, "Come for coffee 3rd Sunday in June." Maybe. But this I know for sure. I'm 74 years old, living in a log cabin under Montana stars, with a scruffy dog who thinks I hung the moon, lilacs blooming along my fence, and a heart that learned how to protect itself without turning to stone. Some people think revenge is taking everything away. I learned the harder truth. Sometimes the greatest revenge is becoming so whole, so peaceful, and so free that the person who hurt you spends the rest of their life trying to become worthy of standing in your light again. And if they do, well, a mother's love is a stubborn thing. It waits, it watches, and sometimes, against all odds, it lets the prodigal come home. If this story broke your heart and healed it at the same time, do 3 things right now. Hit like so YouTube shows it to every parent and child who needs to see it. Subscribe and turn on the bell, because some stories can save families. Comment the words "second chances" if you believe love can still win. Thank you for sitting with me on this porch tonight. Now go call someone you love and tell them before it's too late.